So, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking the two of us to be on the same program at the same time, I was thinking one of the things that we have done and we are currently doing right now is building. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of us, we are in building seasons regularly throughout our life. And the older you are, the more different types of building seasons you have. So we think of when you get out of high school or college, you start to build what your career might look like. And that's a building season. When you get married, you're building a relationship, a foundation. You have kids, you're building a home, you're building. So there's all the different phases and stages of what building looks like. And I think it's for us, we got married a little bit older in life. We were both in our 30s and we had built things on our own. And then when we came together a year after we got married, Leslie had come to me and said, hey, I have a dream that I want to build a music studio. And for me, I don't know much about that. I didn't really take music lessons. I'm a musician, but it wasn't much the traditional route. And so I was thinking, great, I'll be your wingman. I'll be the marketing. I'll be the guy online behind the scenes and we'll see how this thing goes. And what we found is that what was me supporting her turned into both of us really ended up being very passionate about creating this space. Really what it was is even beyond what it was we thought was teaching music lessons, it became building community.
Community, for sure.
It was by far a ministry for us. It became something so much so that we could see our children taking it over. They learned how to walk on the floors of our studios. Their first words came from, in the studio. And so it was a family affair, and we built a family atmosphere around that. And so the people, the students, the families that came, they became part of our family, our community. And so it was an amazing thing, but it was hard.
It was exhausting, yeah. I think I was reflecting on this because in those days, we basically worked around the clock. So David would work and then he would come home, and I was a night owl and I would work till 4 or 5 in the morning. And I would come home and fall asleep, and he would for a few hours till the kids woke up, and he would go. And we spent a lot of time working separately. And I think also we spent a lot of time trying to prove our worth and our identity.
Sure.
And building our identity around this thing. And I think now as we're building things, we're much more relaxed. We know who we are in God.
Yeah.
And we work on things, and then we stop and we spend time with family and go for a run or go for a walk or whatever. And it's interesting. When you're young or immature in Christ, at whatever age you are, if you're building to prove your worth, yes, or to prove your identity or to achieve something that basically shows, look, I've done some good in the world, versus just answering God's call and being obedient, it's much more, it's still hard, but it's much more relaxed and joyful.
Yeah.
Do I think?
Oh, without a doubt. I think what you say is so important, because in that stage of our life, for me personally, there was a lot of insecurity and really clamoring for identity. And especially if frame it because, when Leslie and I met, we met at the music publishing company that we were working for in San Diego. That's where we met. And then 3 months after Leslie coming on board to the company, we started dating. And then it was 18 months later or whatever, we got married. So when we started the music school, it was literally 1 year after we got married is when we actually formed a music company. So we were still young in our relationship because we didn't have much of a dating period. And so we were, for me, trying to find myself in a relationship, in a business, and where's my role. And at that point in time in my life, there was so much fear and so much insecurity that I kind of tucked myself in the role of, I'll go behind you, you've got a vision. One thing about Leslie that you should know is that she is a powerhouse of a woman. She really is. Most people, when they meet her, are like, oh, she's this beautiful, blonde, small, real soft voice. But then when you get to know her, she's just got passion. She's got vision. She's got drive. And so she had all these things that I really admired because there were some of the things that I was lacking. So I kind of tucked myself in the shadow, not recognizing that what she wanted and what she needed was a leader in the house, a leader in, even if I wasn't leading in the role of the music school, but to not always have to be one driving the vision, driving the cart, so to speak. And so that put a real strain in our relationship early on because we had the stressors of starting a business from scratch. So the financial strain of that. Then we found out, really 5 months into starting the school, we found out we were pregnant with our first child. And so we had in that first 3 years, we had 2 children and trying to make it all work. And so all of those stressors. And then for me, I threw myself into the work. Love being a husband, love being a father, love spending time with the kids. But my identity was quickly being formed by what I can accomplish, what I can achieve. And that it became everything, consuming. And that is what you said is spot on, is that the scripture that says, the Proverbs that says, without vision, people perish. I would actually say on top of that truth, on top of that, a wrong vision of who you are when you build leads to disaster as well. Because what happens is, so many of us have probably encountered this, we end up building something that becomes an idol. Something it's a version of God that's in my own image. It says, had no other gods before me, and not to worship graven idols. A graven idol is something that you've carved that has an image that you can control, that you can say, I've done this, and you bow down to it. And not very much, even though it was a ministry, we had very much, God was in it, no doubt about it. He was in it, but what I found is that it quickly became an idol that I didn't even know until it really crumbled. And a burden, oh yeah, heavy burden.
And so if we fast forward, I'm actually getting to know David in a new way because he's my husband of 19 years, and he is a father and a husband and a musician, and he works for a music company. And then all of a sudden one day he just also became an author of 8 books and an app builder. And I was like, who are you? I have to get to know you again. So how to compare that? Like, go back to how you felt about that. Building a music school, being all in, working 24/7, being consumed by it, loving the Lord, lifting it up, all coming from a good place, but it was also a burden. Right. It was also an idol for both of us. Yeah. So contrast that with what you're building now, because you've built a lot. I blinked and I didn't know who you were. Well,
I think the best way to describe the journey of it's, especially as we talk about what I told Andy, that the title of this time together would be the imperfect process of building for the future. And when you've built a few things that are successful, things that have failed, even relationships, right? If you build relationships that sometimes they don't go the way you think it would, or things like that, there's an imperfect process, but if you do it right and you do it by his leading, you're building for him instead of building for yourself. So what we found is, after 11 and a half years of running this music school, what happened, we were in San Diego, living in San Diego, and Leslie really could see the writing on the wall that we cannot afford living in San Diego. We had given it a great shot. We raised our kids there. We were living by the ocean with our little girls, and we loved that life, but we couldn't afford it, so we moved further away. And we just found that the expense was more than we could handle. So Leslie looked and found a job here in South Carolina, and we ended up moving. She got the job. We ended up moving the whole family out here while the school was still running, with the idea that I would run and manage it from South Carolina, because we had things in place that would keep the school running. And then we moved here, and 2 weeks later, the world closed through COVID. It was in 2020. So COVID closed everything down, and we found ourselves wonderful. Leslie had a nice job as the music minister at a church here in South Carolina, but the music school couldn't survive COVID. And so I hit this space of what I thought was not only my identity. Who I was someone running this school that I loved and was passionate about. And again, it was about the people. There were so many people. We actually had over 1,000 students coming weekly for private lessons. And then we had 6 different off-campus music programs we were running in schools. So it was massive. It was just massive. Our budget was $1.5 million a year, and our expenses probably 1.55. But yeah, it was a massive thing. So there was so many people involved, and the idea when I had to tell them that the school is closing, the staff, there was 35 teachers that I had to let know, and it was heartbreaking. It was absolute wrenching. So not only was it the community we had grown to love, the people that we worked with we'd grown to love, but it was like my identity wrapped into that, and also what I saw as this is something I was going to pass down. So it felt like inheritance being broken. It felt like my identity being broken. It felt like everyone I loved was being abandoned. It was rock bottom. Not to mention, the day that the board of directors and I decided to close the school was the second day of my second back surgery. So I was on a Zoom call on pain meds in my bed on a board meeting, making the decision that the school can't make it. We can't survive. And so that began this shaking. And so the next 14 months was 12 weeks of recovering from surgery. There was the dismantling and all the financials and legal stuff of the school, and then nothing. Then, we're still in COVID. There's not a lot of jobs open. Our finances, there was some unemployment coming. But we had counted on having some income from both of us. And so it wasn't just a big shaking. So in that, there was 14 months of soul searching. For me, that was the beginning of the Lord breaking things that I had falsely put my hope in and reintroducing himself as the God of the impossible. And so that was pretty much the most formational year and a half of my life that was done in exile, so to speak, away from my family and away from my home in San Diego in a strange new place. But it reconnected us as a family. It reconnected us in our marriage, and it began to rebuild something that was on a much more sure foundation.